to exit. All right, so to start off, we'll go to visitor comments, and we have a visitor today.
Luckily, our visitor is actually going to be part of the presentation, hopefully.
Well, 2 for 1.
Tyler?
You are the one.
All right. Well, I can just introduce myself real quick, I guess. But my name's Gary Keck, and I'm the Design and Development Manager for Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. And like Tyler mentioned, I'll be presenting with Sara tonight, a project for you all. So looking forward to going over it with everybody.
Excellent. Welcome, Gary. I'm happy to have you with us. And on that note, we can turn to Sara to talk about downtown parks and open space framework update.
Sure. Thank you, Erik, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint here in just a minute. You met Gary. You saw me last summer. Last summer, I was here with Janine Roosted from THPRD, and she and I were the co-project managers for the downtown parks and open space plan that we were about to embark on. Well, Janine is no longer with THPRD, so now my partner in Parks Crime is Gary Keck, and it's been great working with Gary. We've got this project sort of kicked off. So what we're going to do tonight is very briefly tell you where we're at in the project, but also give you some time to ask any questions, but primarily to respond to some community engagement that we've started. We just started community engagement specifically for this project this last weekend when we were at the farmers market and over at the BG Carts, but we've also, through other downtown planning processes and projects like the visioning project and the downtown equity strategy, we've been asking people in these other projects about parks and open space. And also THPRD has done their own vision plan, and they've heard some things from people. So what we're going to talk, what I really was hoping to share with you today was what we've heard from the public so far about what they think about downtown activities that they want to engage in, and a little bit more as we ask them about parks and new open spaces downtown. So with that, I'm going to pull up this PowerPoint, and I'm not always very good at this. So let's see how we do. And that's not working. So let me go to this and try this one. Okay, can you see the slideshow? All right, I'm going to move it into slideshow mode if I can. All right, well, I'm going to work with that. Okay, so Gary and I introduced ourselves. Are you seeing the full thing, or are you seeing a split screen?
We're seeing your split screen, Sara.
Okay, I am not sure how to get rid of that split screen.
Sara, why don't you let me give it a go, and then just tell me when to change slide.
I will let you drive.
It wasn't really split screen, by the way, Sara. It was just, you had all of the slides on the left.
Yeah, 2 years of doing this, and I still haven't figured out how to share a slide. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Chase. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. You saw this slide when Janine and I came to talk to you last summer. Basically, we've done a lot of plans for downtown. We've got a lot of things happening downtown. It's growing, it's changing, but we haven't really planned for new parks and open spaces and natural areas in downtown. So we need to do that before it's too late to get those things in place. Next slide, please. I think we missed the slide.
I think we skipped one, yeah.
And I think because it may have been on hide. And if not, I can, there we go. Yep,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, I thought I took that off hide.
So I'll go ahead and go over this one, Chase, and there's a few bullet points that we'll just, if you just want to click them as we go down them, Chase, if you don't mind. This is one of those animation slides, but project goals. The project will provide a high-level plan that builds off all the previous plans that Sara had brought up. And we're going to be looking at the types of parks for downtown. So the next bullet, there you go. And so that's like looking at plazas, pocket parks, natural spaces. The next one we'll be looking at is recommending a general location for parks and open spaces in downtown. And then the next thing we'll be looking at is determining the types of activities that the public wants to do downtown, which will help us determine the amenities that we're doing. We're going to be asking the public what type of look and feel they want to see for downtown. And we also want to provide a plan that helps us provide spaces that are welcoming and inclusive. And the last thing that we'll be doing with the plan is providing an implementation strategy at the end. So next slide, Chase, I'll do the next one as well. All right, so downtown, the yellow dash area is the general area that we're looking at when we look at this plan. So you've got on the south side, it's basically 5th Street down by the Beaverton Library and City Park. On the north, we're looking at Center Street is the line that we're following there. And then on the west, we're at Hawken Avenue on the backside of the Cedar Hills Crossing Mall. And then we go towards the east where we'll be stopping around 117th Avenue is the general location. So next slide, I'll hand it over to you, Sara.
Great, sure. Hey, Gary, do you want to talk? Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've heard so far. Please hold your thoughts and questions till we're done. And then Gary's going to talk a little bit about the 4 questions that as we embark on a more robust engagement strategy, the 4 questions that we're going to be asking, that we will be asking the public. So the first thing, again, this is from engagement that we've heard both in the downtown equity strategy as well as through some of the visioning and some of the other planning projects, that are going on right now. People clearly want public spaces to foster well-being. They want places to sit and relax. They want shaded places. They want places to walk and bike and exercise. They want a place to connect with nature, have fun, interact with each other. And that's not a surprise. What was kind of interesting is we also heard people say that they want more commerce around public space. And that's an area, we didn't get a lot of detail about that. And that's an area that I think we're really interested in knowing more about because that could influence where we look to place public open spaces. It also may influence what kind of activities we allow in a park or open space. We heard that public spaces should feel safe. That's not a surprise. People have been asking for more family-friendly and more accessible downtown spaces. But we also heard some concerns about open space, not surprising. There is some concern about police over-surveillance of spaces and a concern, of course, about homeless individuals that we do have in our community. Next slide, please. We also heard the public spaces should be well cared for. I think we all want to see that. People really like water fountains and water play. And I'm sure Gary, knows all about that too, because THPRD is providing those kinds of things in their spaces. People want things that are well maintained, and they want some noise barriers. Particularly, people want spaces that they feel welcome in, and that we want to be able to provide spaces that are welcome to families, to seniors, to those with different abilities, to those that are from different places and different nationalities and different backgrounds. Public spaces should connect to values of inclusion and equity. People want more places for social gathering. They want events that bring diverse people together. And specific things that people have talked about are they want more opportunities to enjoy music, have picnics, skate parks, see and experience art and live theater. And then also people like the spirit of the First Street Dining Commons. We didn't ask them specifically about First Street Dining Commons, but it's come up as a sort of shared space where people can sit down and relax and enjoy each other's company. Next slide, please. Oh, Gary, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the questions we're asking the public in our engagement moving forward.
Yeah, so real quick before I get onto the timeline, and to build off what you just mentioned, Sarah, the Park District did complete a visioning plan back in 2020, and the community helped us shape that plan. And it calls for the district to focus on 4 core values, which align a lot with what the city has been hearing as well. We heard that we want to be welcoming and inclusive. We want play for everyone. We want accessible and safe spaces. And then the 4th one was preserving natural spaces. So we're hearing a lot of the same thing with a lot of the plans that have already been done, which is great. And the beauty is between the city and the district, we're doing a lot of that. We may not be doing it downtown yet, but we have a good start with other areas within the city and the district, and we're doing a lot of that stuff. So to get to what we're looking for, there's 4 questions we are going to be asking the public. And they are, what types of parks, open spaces, natural areas would you like to see in downtown? The second question is, what types of activities would you like to do in these spaces? Then we want to ask them, do you have any ideas for design, look, feel of these spaces that would fit the downtown of Beaverton? And then the last question is, what ideas do you have to help make these spaces welcoming and inclusive to everyone? So those are the 4 core questions we're going to be asking through this public engagement process. So Chase, if you can go to the next slide, I'll talk about the public engagement process briefly. There we go. And this one's animated as well, Chase. So for spring, if you click, I think this one's animated. There you go. So let me get to my notes here. With the timeline, the community engagement phase will run through the spring, and we actually started, as Sarah mentioned, this past weekend with a couple of pop-up events. Sarah, I think the last number I heard was we had over 100 people stop by at the Saturday market Saturday morning, which is quite a few. I think we're at 105 is the last number I heard. And the previous day, we went to the BG food court for an hour during lunch, and we got 20, 25 people stop by and give us feedback. So we got a pretty good start. But you'll see us sending out a survey soon in this phase to start asking those questions that I mentioned. And then we'll be moving to the summer. And in the summer, we'll gather all the information that we've heard from the engagement phase, and we're going to create a draft plan. And what we want to do is share that with the public, and we anticipate having a community workshop in this phase. We haven't determined if it's going to be in person or virtual yet, so more to come on that, so keep an eye out for that. And then in the fall, our hope is to revise the plan based on all the feedback that we've received and head to City Council and the THPRD Board of Directors in the fall for their approval and adoption of the plan. Next slide, please. So ways to get involved. Here's 3 great ways. We've got a web page up on the city's website. You can also find it on THPRD's on our open projects. It'll link you to this web page here in number 1. It's going to have all the updates you need. It'll probably have the link to the survey eventually, and if the draft plan, when the draft plan becomes available, it'll probably have a link to that as well. It'd be great to see you all join us in any of the events that we have. So keep an eye on the webpage for any updates on events that might be coming up. And then, as I mentioned, the survey will be coming out soon. So we're looking to have it open between mid-May to mid-June. So I'd hope that everybody get a chance to take a look at the survey and fill it out and let us know what you think. So next slide, I think that's it, right, Sarah?
Yeah, yep. So what we are curious, thank you so much, Chase, for helping out and getting that slideshow together. And we can pull that slideshow back up if you want to see what people were saying, but would love to hear your thoughts either on the 4 questions that Gary mentioned or responses to the public engagement that we've gotten so far, or general questions about the project.
I just have a comment to start with. I think one of your objectives was basically to preserve nature. And I wonder if there are any thoughts about going even further than that to restore nature. You know, I think anyone who looks at Beaverton Creek, for example, sees that it's, you know, it's not in a natural state. It's full of debris and so on. And the other thing I think of, and I'm sure you're thinking about this too, the city of Portland is noting that they're losing a lot of mature trees. And I wonder if there's any thought about when you put trees in park areas, especially new park areas, of using more mature trees as opposed to very young trees. If people want shade, if we want the benefit of trees, it might be worth that investment. So just some thoughts.
Thank you. I'll just make a quick comment, and Gary might want to say something about trees. I don't know.
Yep.
It's interesting. I sort of heard 2 things about restoring nature. One, I heard creeks, and of course, one opportunity is to actually try to daylight more of the creeks that we have downtown. And I'm also hearing you talk about debris, whether that's natural debris or like trash debris. So I think that restoration is definitely on the table. And as I said, I was hearing kind of a couple different aspects of restoration from you.
Yeah, from the Park District side, I agree, Sarah. Most of Beaverton Creek's underground in a pipe through downtown, right? We see little spurts of it here and there. But we've done a recent project where we daylighted a creek at a park, Somerset West. It was a creek that was underground since the 60s. And we fortunately had the space to do it, but it's become a great amenity because the kids want to get down in the water, you know, and we're trying to connect nature with the public. A lot of times we've had several designs where we brought people down to the water on purpose, knowing they're going to go there anyway. Let's just create a space for them. So I agree with Sarah. I think that's on the table. We can look at that. You know, obviously that depends on right of way and who owns what, but and as far as trees, yeah, we have looked at planting larger trees in certain situations. And depending on where we're at, we had this, you know, we did a tour this last week and the city's arborist was on the tour with us. And we talked about trees specifically, looking at the types of trees and making sure we design it so they're going to be successful, right? You know, not just put them in a little bitty planter strip and walk away, because we all know they're going to lift the concrete. There's ways to get around that. So those are all good comments that we will be looking for. Maybe not the details in this plan, but as we move forward and start developing parks and open spaces, for sure.
So Jerome was reading my mind, as he seems to do frequently. I had a related question about, you know, the nature, but specifically you mentioned in the presentation about like stormwater runoff and that sort of thing, and I was wondering sort of if you could elaborate on that, and if the idea was to do that using natural methods like trees and things like that.
Yeah, you know, as you know, downtown Beaverton is in a basin, and we have a lot of downtown, particularly north of north of Farmington is we've got a pretty extensive 100-year floodplain that runs through downtown Beaverton. So we know that stormwater is an issue. There are really great opportunities and great examples around the country, around the world, probably even good local examples where we can try to pair natural storm retention with either recreation or passive open space that the public can actually access. And I think Gary can probably talk a little bit more about it, but we've been just starting to talk about where are there's opportunities for dual purpose spaces.
Yeah, and the world I'm at THPRD, we're the department that designs and builds the parks. So stormwater is something we deal with on a regular basis. Clean Water Services is the local jurisdiction that monitors that. And for parks, they treat us like any other developer. So we will be looking at that, Erik, for sure, on the next phase when we start finding that we have land and we have this plan finished and we know where we want to go. But there's a couple of ways we do it. You know, we depending on space, right? I mean, if we only get a tiny little plaza, we're going to have to figure something out. But there are mechanical ways to treat water and detain water these days that we've taken advantage of at the Park District when we don't have the space to put in a large swale or to incorporate something like Sarah's mentioned. If we can, we'll definitely look at that. But it's more about area more than trees when it comes to the stormwater requirements for runoff. So, and depending on what you put in there too, right? We only have to treat the hard surface stuff. So it's not like we'll be treating all the lawn areas. But you think of Griffith Park, if you're all familiar with that, you know, in a good rain event, that becomes a little detention area, right? The creek backs up, the park, the little bowl fills up, and then it goes away, and the public gets to use it when it dries out. So we'll be considering all those types of options, I think, as we move through this process.
Great, thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I captured your questions correctly, Gary. If you could just repeat questions 1 and 3, I'll put them in the chat for everyone.
You bet. So the first question that we're going to be asking the public is, what types of parks, open spaces, or natural areas would you like to see? And that's referring to, you want to see plazas, you want to see a park, or pocket park. And then question, what's the other question? You didn't
3,
want them
please.
all? Oh, 3. So 3 would be, do you have ideas for the look and feel of the spaces that would fit downtown Beaverton?
All
So
right.
and that'll be a tough one to keep everybody out of the weeds, right? That's a question that some people want to start designing a park right away, and I'm one of them. As a landscape architect, that's right where I go. But we're looking for, you know, the look and the feel. What style? What's downtown Beaverton? What do you want it to be someday? I mean, this is great. We're at the start here. I think this is a great spot to be.
So one of my questions was, I liked what Erik had said and what was responded to at Griffith Park, because it does look like that's a pretty good retention area, since the downtown Beaverton, as just has been alluded to, is a 100-year floodplain. So to me, it would be that multi-use, fields for people to play in. And it occurred to me that, are there some different size variables that you're looking at? Because, you've got large, I mean, to me, just thinking about this, it might be that I would like to see more smaller that are connected naturally, maybe spaces that would have, all kinds of very unusual, cool things that, kids could come down and look at. As a teacher, I'm a teacher. And so, when I think of these parks, it's wonderful. Are there ponds for fish that, are in there that kids could look at and hopefully not animals eat, but too much anyway. But what, different sizes. I'm intrigued by the different sizes. Because at one hand, it feels like you're just going to design something and put it in, which is our normal thing. Or is it going to be sort of fitting it in? And it would be cool if it could fit into the commerce, parts right next to it, and not just be something, well, here's where the parks are over here, right? But it runs through the commerce, it runs through. So it's the theme of running through that, what we want to make Beaverton like, it would seem. That's just my opinion. Maybe they're smaller, maybe they're various sizes and shapes and purposes, but also just interesting. There's the interesting areas to look at. There's areas where people could work. I don't want to say work out, but yes, maybe work out, play softball on a Sunday afternoon. All the while, when it rains, it, collects water and helps dissipate or fix, that problem as well. So I don't know, sizes, different sizes and shapes to me, I guess, is my sort of wonder on this.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Devon. It alludes to question one when we asked what types of parks. I mentioned, plazas. Those can be a couple thousand square feet, right? They can be pretty small, but they're public spaces that people could connect to. We have a parks functional plan that we recently updated, knowing that we want to do more work downtown. Before 2018, when we updated it, we only had a couple of categories of parks. We had neighborhood park and community park and linear parks. And a neighborhood park's 2 acres. So imagine a full-size soccer field. If you go out to HMT and see one of those synthetic turf fields, that's 2 acres. That's a pretty big piece to find downtown Beaverton potentially. I think sizes is going to be determined on what land we find, or how we can combine them and whatnot. But when we updated our plan, we added plazas and pocket parks. So a pocket park is more of a half-acre site, something that's smaller in scale than a typical neighborhood park, I guess is what I'll say. So I appreciate your comments. I agree with you too.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, Oswaldo.
Thank you. And let me just turn on the light here real quick. But one of your objectives, it talks about equity and inclusion. And my question is, every time, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are you doing to include people of different backgrounds in the surveys? Because it's nice to think about these type of things, but what are we doing to accomplish that? Because it cannot only and always be on paper just so we look good. We have to do something about it. So what does that mean for you guys, and how are you going to accomplish it?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking it. First of all, the comments that you saw that I presented on the slides just a little while ago, the majority of those comments came from focus groups that we did as part of the downtown equity strategy. And those were, I think, community-specific conversations. And Chase actually could elaborate a little bit more on the various communities that we talked to. But those were very intentional community-based conversations, and we're going to continue to do that. The survey is one thing, and the survey is an important thing, and these pop-up engagement events that we do are fun and a great way to hit a lot of people, but we know there are people that we're not going to find just by those traditional methods. So we are doing what actually a lot of projects are doing these days, where we are contracting with community-based organizations to go out and actually have conversations, focus groups, or other kinds of face-to-face conversations with folks of various communities, be they particular racial or ethnic or cultural communities, or we know that we don't often hear from the disability or the accessibility community. We also know that we don't often hear from youth. So those are some of the groups that we're going to specifically target. Oh, I think downtown residents, particularly residents of affordable housing. Those are others that we want to specifically target. So we have an opportunity to do a face-to-face conversation, not just asking them questions from a survey, which is helpful, but to actually hear what they have to say and dig a little deeper. And I'll give you a good example of something that came out of a conversation with a particular or several particular cultural communities or culturally representative communities. When we heard that people wanted access to commerce near the parks, we actually heard that from communities of color. And that's, so there's an example of something that we very clearly heard that we may not have heard if we had been just talking to folks who usually fill out surveys, right? So it's a long way of saying we're very interested and very committed to getting a variety of viewpoints and working hard to get those who may not normally participate.
Yes, sir. If I
Thank
could
you.
add on to that, Oswaldo, just so you know, the Park District has a series of equity grants internally, and we applied for one for this project specifically, and we got it. We got $3,000 to help us go and team up with a local community-based organization. Now, we haven't decided which organization yet. We're in the process of doing that, but we've actually got funding to help pay them to be participants in our organization. I know the city this weekend provided a translator on site at the farmers market, and all the material that we're putting in Spanish and English, both. So those are some of the mechanisms we're using to reach out to more than just English speaking. So.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. This is Josh. I have some input. You had asked the question earlier about what types of parks or like look and feel we would like. And I'd just like to state a couple of things. I'm from Southern California, and there are tons of parks there, but they're not like the Oregon parks. The Oregon parks have this very special, unique characteristic where it looks like nature, like you're out in the wilderness, which is, for me, incredible. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Other parks around the country don't always have that. They have grass and some trees and some benches, and it doesn't have that nature feel. And so just my input for Beaverton would be just do what Oregon does best, like take advantage and tap into that beautiful nature that we have. And I forgot who said it earlier, but there was a really good comment about restoring nature or restoring habitat. And I think doing that here would be great. We have the infrastructure, we have the creek, and I think take advantage of that would be great for the city's brand.
That's great. Thank you, Josh.
Any last questions for Sara and Gary?
Question
Paige?
real quick. There was mention of the smaller parks, like the pocket parks. And I was wondering if you had an example of some of those that already exist, or if they don't already exist. I don't know, just a general, to visualize, like what would you see in one of those pocket parks? Like what type of features would you tend to see?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paige, and we don't have a lot of them, but we're starting to get a few. I'll let you know. South Cooper Mountain area. It's an area where working with a lot of developers down there by the new high school off of Shoals Ferry and 175th-ish. And we're finding that we're getting a lot of pocket park proposals from the developers. And what we've been doing is we're working with, I don't know, at any given time, we're working with 5 or 6 different developers whose developments all touch each other. So we're working real hard to make sure trails connect. We're working with the city on that. And when we look at these pocket parks, we're trying to take a look at, making sure that we don't put a playground in every pocket park. If they're only a few blocks apart, do we really need a playground in every single one? And it leads to what one of you had mentioned is diversity and interest, right? I think, well, I know what we're doing is we're taking a look at providing different amenities. So there's a series of 3 coming up down there in South Cooper Mountain. We just got them approved by our board, the concept plans. One's going to be a nature play. It's really small. It's a half acre. So, you know, not even half a football field really, but it's going to have nature play type stuff, logs, imaginary play, a lot of the stuff that we did as kids if you lived out in suburban or rural areas. But then 2 blocks away, we've got a pocket park with a pavilion for some picnicking or hanging out, as well as a little lawn area and a playground. And then a few blocks away, we've got another one, which is more of a plaza, where it's just a place to kind of reflect, and there'll be lots of benches and seat walls to hang out. And in the latter 2, we're designing them so that we can program them as well, because we have what's called Recmobile, where we have an actual van that shows up at different parks or even apartment complexes, and we have activities for kids for the day to do. So we're trying to design our spaces to see, can we get the Recmobile to these spaces? Or is there a way we can program it? You know, fitness in the park. You might have seen that advertised recently. So we're trying to make sure we have a variety of opportunities with the pocket parks. And I would say we would probably look at the same for downtown Beaverton and make sure that we get that good variety. As far as plazas go, we have, I'll say we have one. It just got built. It's the Cedar Grove Affordable Housing Plaza there. It's on Cornell and Murray. And it's literally, it's 2,000 square feet, but it's got a little fountain in it, little interactive fountain and a seat wall. It's just a nice place to sit. It's called Reflections Plaza. So if you get a chance, maybe stop by there. But that's an example of a smaller space that's a public space that could be used by everybody. So
That's awesome. I love the idea of, you know, the variety of uses like that. Like you said, you don't necessarily need a playground at every park, although they're nice to have. But you know,
yeah,
and I find that if you have them all over the place, you kind of they're used less frequently, if that makes sense. You know, the same group lives around there. They don't use the anyway. I like everything you're saying. So I guess
yeah. Yeah, I think what I've noticed with the pocket parks, we're finding a lot of them are being put in next to apartment complexes, you know, to housing that doesn't have a yard. So having several nearby in those situations, I think are going to be beneficial for livability of that community, in my mind.
Thank you.
Erik, I'm going to just jump in real quick. And I believe Gary and Sara, you're going to Central Beaverton NAC tonight as well.
Yes,
Okay.
although we're switching, we've got a different team doing that meeting.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay. Great. Well, if there's no more, if you didn't, I didn't mean to interrupt, then I just wanted to note that because I wasn't sure if you were needing to hop off or not, and allow for any final thoughts. But my final thought is, Gary, thank you very much. Thank you, Park District Representative, and how the district is coming together with the city, constantly working together. But this is actually a really significant piece of interactive, to use play terms and park terms, opportunity between the 2 organizations. Thank you for allowing me to participate on last week, Sara and Gary, and the walkabout throughout downtown, and with your consultants, and having partnerships or folks from both of our partnerships to be with us during those walks. I think it was invaluable. We are not a park provider. The district is our park provider, and we are very, very excited to be able to move forward in an endeavor that we have never seen before in our downtown. So I wanted to give that shout out and thank both of you. And Gary, please pass that on to your district.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Tyler. We're excited to be working with the city on this as well. All right.
So we'll come back when we've got more to share.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sara and Gary. Really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got Molly and Downtown Parking Management and Action Plan update. Go ahead, take it away, Molly.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for letting us join you tonight at your meeting. We wanted to come in and give you an update, as we've tried to do on occasion, as what is everything that's going on with downtown parking. I apologize if they're slamming doors. It's getting close to bedtime in my house, so there might be some action behind me. But on that note, I'm actually going to introduce my consultants who have been working with us on this project, Julie Dixon and Emily Quantenitz from Dixon Resources Unlimited. And they are actually going to do the majority of the presentation. And I will jump in, and Chase will jump in, as he's been part of this project as well, as needed, and to answer any questions you all might have. So I'll actually mute myself so you won't hear all of the chaos that goes on behind me this time of night. So Julie, Emily, and
Great.
Chase, I think you've got the presentation. So
Great, thank you, Molly. And Chase, do you want to share a screen? I can share a screen as well. Just, I don't know if we synced up on that. You want me to go ahead and share a screen, Chase?
Go for it.
Perfect, thank you so much. Let me just get that going here right quick. Hopefully I've gotten better at this now that this is our norm now in terms of communication. Chase, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Okay, perfect. And then did it advance as well? Great. Okay, so we are in, thank you so much, Molly. So my name is Julie Dixon. My colleague Emily Quatnitz has joined us as well. And we are here today to provide you an update on the Downtown Parking Management Action Plan. And it's a brief presentation, but hopefully it'll give you all a great overview of really kind of where the project stands. And again, available to answer any questions and also receive any feedback regarding where the project stands today and the intention of the direction in which we are heading. So I think it's important when we talk about the Downtown Parking Management Action Plan. I know that that is a mouthful. When we talk about the guiding principles of the program, everything that we really talk about here and today has been based upon stakeholder feedback. One of the things I really am proud of to say is, as a result of the City of Beaverton's efforts and staff, is really hearing from the community members and really hearing your prioritization and your need. And I think that this conversation continues to make sure that we're having an adaptable and equitable solution that's going to work for the city, not only today, but also in the growing future. And so when we talk about the principles, it's really important to develop a sustainable solution, and not just a sustainable solution and making sure that it pays for itself, but also one that is sustainable as it relates to green initiatives and the impacts on the environment, making sure that it's equitable, making sure that it's balanced and fair to everyone, and making sure that we consider, you know, the variety of needs throughout our community as we talk about parking management solutions. And again, adaptability. One of the things that's important too is that we know things are changing. I think all of us have had our worlds rocked over the last 2 years. Who would have ever thought we could say we've survived a global pandemic? And so I think that that has taught us all a very important lesson about being able to be adaptable in our day-to-day, but it also is evocative of how we need to manage parking and transportation solutions moving forward as well. And knowing that in order to implement change, it's something that we have to do gradually and incrementally. And most importantly, we want to make sure that the program is based on data. This is something that as technology has improved dramatically over this last decade in particular, especially these last several years, we want to get to a place where the parking program is being based on data rather than perception. A lot of us have opinions and ideas as it relates to parking. And the fact is we want to make sure that we're utilizing data into that discussion and it's not just based on opinion or perception. And also, and I think this is saved for last because I think it's one of the most important elements, we want our community to have a positive experience as it relates to parking, especially in the downtown. And I always like to describe it as parking needs to be easy, convenient, and accessible. And that should be applicable to all things parking related, whether it be signage, whether it be policies, whether it be infrastructure or technology. If we can make sure that we check those boxes, making sure that parking is easy, convenient, and accessible, it really does meet the needs and addresses the concerns when we talk about parking management as a whole. One of the things we're trying to avoid is temporary Band-Aid solutions. This is something that we consistently inherit across the country when we come into parking programs, is that they've just put layer upon layer of temporary solutions. And when we start to really rip off the Band-Aids, we really got to identify, where the really core root of the issue is. And we have to also make sure that we're looking at this comprehensively so that we're not just chasing one issue to another part of the community, or basically fixing it in one corner and then having it be, an impact on another corner. And so those are things that when we talk about impacts of like new developments, the new garage, the library parking area, the farmer's market, the high school, these are all factors that we want to make sure, again, that we're looking at this holistically. And very important when we talk about key considerations. This is not easy, I have to tell you, because the fact is we all have different priorities and different demands and different needs. But one of the things that we want to be sure is that we get to a position where we're being proactive rather than reactive to the parking demands, and that we're always cognizant of the end user experience. And the end user can include you, myself. It can include city staff, the folks that have to maintain it or operate it. It could be the finance department, the adjudication office, the courts. But again, very importantly, yourselves as community members, and making sure that, again, it's a positive experience. We want to focus on making sure that the program is focused on the positive, meaning compliance. Rather than me talking about writing parking tickets, I always like to talk about people following the rules, because I always try to look at that positive side of the picture and making sure that, again, we're looking at that the program is manageable and easy to follow. And again, getting to the core root of that issue is really what we're looking to solve when we talk about the program. One of the things when we talk about the update on the current action plan draft is I like to call it the choose your own adventure approach to managing parking in Beaverton. This is important because one of the things that the action plan basically does is it lays out a guideline or a roadmap for decisions where you can come to, if you remember those books that we read as a kid, when you come to this crossroads, you can choose path A or path B. And basically this roadmap gives you the different descriptions of what you would have to do to follow either of those paths. And so that's an important aspect of this particular approach, because one of the things that's important is we have to be adaptive when it comes to parking management. You never know what the next big hot restaurant's going to be, or the next big, no pun intended, driver to come to the downtown. But it's important that we want to be cognizant of what those impacts can be and make sure that the program is adaptive to meet those particular demands. So as we mentioned earlier, the project actually began in January of 2020, and then that pandemic kicked in and happened. And I think we can all appreciate that. But then it was in June of 2021 where we really started the really proactive outreach program. Some of you might have seen the Popsicles for Parking program, which I think is one of the most unique efforts I've ever been involved with, where if you would just share your opinion or feedback on parking, you got to have a popsicle as a result of it. We were out at a variety of community events. We went door to door. We were also at the farmer's market. We also conducted an online survey where we had over 1,100 responses. I have to tell you, those were really impressive numbers for a community like yours to have folks come out, but it also demonstrates how important parking is to our community members to have that kind of response. And so basically all of this fed into the action plan that you see a little snippet of what the cover sheet looks like. And really, again, those guidelines of the steps that should be taken incrementally for that roadmap that, again, provides ongoing evaluation. Some of you might have already been in the parking garage. I just recently launched, and there is technology that's called Parking Access Revenue Control Systems, which are the gate arms that you have in the parking garage. And also the city has selected a parking operator, a company called SP Plus, that will support the parking enforcement pilot, which is part of this initiative as well to, again, seek compliance when we talk about parking mitigation throughout the downtown area. And we had 2 virtual public meetings just last month to talk about this exact same conversation that we're having tonight. So I think just to highlight a couple of the key strategies when it comes to the program is really trying to consolidate the public parking supply. We really do want to encourage people to park in the parking garages wherever possible. We also want to try to have, and I'm kind of jumping ahead over to shared parking, but there are many private parking lots in and around the downtown, and anything that we can do to be able to tie those parking lot locations into the parking supply availability throughout the downtown is something that we're trying to vet out. There are already a couple of locations that are participating, and we're hoping that that's going to increase. We also really want to leverage the pedestrian friendly aspect of the downtown to make sure that safe passage is a big part of being able to navigate your way around the downtown area. And quite a few community members have already shared and expressed concern about lighting. And if you want us to park at the library parking lot, making sure that we do have, again, a safe route for that, as well as the concerns about parking on one side of the highway versus the other, and having to navigate across some major arterials throughout the downtown as well. We're trying to tie all of that in the hopes that we can encourage the park once approach, which basically means that you wouldn't be reparking your car throughout the downtown, making sure that we have prioritization of short-term parking spaces so that there is convenient parking available for you to kind of run in and pick up your dry cleaning or pick up your dinner in order to get on about your business. And then also making sure that we have disabled access parking spaces located throughout the downtown and available to our community members that need that type of access. I mentioned already about data-driven decisions, but I want to reinforce the fact that this is really important for a program like yours, especially in a community that's continuing to evolve and grow, is we want to make sure that the city continues collecting data in the near future and ongoing, so that we can make sure to make data-based decisions and determine how the parking should be managed based upon those results. And I think it's really important too, when I talk about compliance-based programs and talk about the ways that we can manage parking moving forward, there are no secrets when it comes to parking management. In fact, we want everyone to know what we're doing. We want everyone to know what the rules are because we want everyone to follow them. And so the more information that we can put out there, the more messaging, the more outreach as possible, the more people that will understand the policies and the recognition of the rules. And so I think it's important too that as we have data results coming in, is to continue to provide updates to groups like yourselves, to city council, business groups, you name it, and making sure that that messaging gets out there, because this is not just a flash in the pan type of solution. This is something that we know can have a long-lasting, long-term effect in and around the downtown area. And we want to make sure that we've got everybody's buy-in into that process. An important part of that buy-in is employee participation. We know that today some of the impacts are actually caused as a result of the employees of our downtown who are juggling the current time limits and trying to figure out the most convenient place that they can park and still run out to their car and juggle it from space to space. And so what we're trying to do is identify affordable, convenient locations that will basically make it easier for our employees to park in those designated locations. And again, that's going to be a big part of the participation to make sure that this program is successful in the long term. And I do want to let you know that this model and approach has worked very effectively in other communities. I already mentioned the shared parking, and we can come back to that if there's any questions. But the other part is when we talk about compliance. The one driver of the over 1,100 responses that we had from the community survey, you might be surprised to learn that one of the top priorities was people asking for enforcement, asking most importantly for consistent enforcement. And that's a really important factor in where the city is really primed and teed up to deploy the parking operator that's been selected for that program. One of the things that I really want to highlight is that we anticipate that that model will follow what I like to describe as a parking ambassador model, where basically the parking compliance officers are basically parking ambassadors in the downtown. It provides another set of eyes and ears and they have the tools to be able to provide education and basically warning notices, but they also have the ability to cite as well. But I want to make sure that everyone understands that the priority for this program indeed is education, and we're seeking compliance, and that customer service mode is really the intent of the operation. So a couple of other logistic items for you to be aware of. We are looking to automate the permit management system so that our permits will be very customer friendly, making sure that people can acquire their permits online through different customer service features. This will be really important and relevant as we deploy an employee parking permit program, is really making the program so it can be self-managed. And then license plate recognition technology. This is something that when we talk about that ongoing data collection is going to be a really important resource and tool into that effort. And it's also how we will monitor the time limits and permit compliance for those locations. What many of you may not be familiar with is that our license plates are obviously our unique identifier on our cars, and we'll be leveraging those license plates to basically serve as your parking permit, or basically your moniker to identify your start or end time for a time limit zone. And it's how we can make sure that any of those folks that are trying to, I'll call it, game the system today, or maybe they're jockeying from one parking space to another, will be able to leverage the license plate recognition technology to ensure that folks don't abuse that program. One of the things I like to highlight here, especially for those of you who are maybe concerned about Big Brother or people being able to look up your plates, the LPR camera is strictly used to identify your plate as being valid to park there or not. There's no looking up of DMV information or registration information or anything like that. It's strictly used as a confirmation tool to make sure you're eligible to park in that particular location. And one of the other operational details is the ability for us to hire a parking coordinator who will provide additional support that will be needed for the program in the near future. And so you've heard me say this a couple times, but making data-driven decisions is really going to be important. That tied in with the ongoing feedback from the community and council is really what is going to drive this program moving forward. And one of the things that I think most communities are surprised by is that the conversation continues beyond today. They always think, oh, we made our decisions, we're done. That's actually not the case because of the fact that parking is a very fluid part of your downtown process. It's something that the data will basically help drive the future decisions. And so being able to make ongoing evaluations and making sure that we're considering the time limits, the posted operating hours, how we can manage during peak times, like when the farmers market is operating on Saturdays. The potential of implementing paid parking in the future is also something that could be a deciding factor in that, but also being able to determine the need for particular wayfinding or parking guidance signs. That can be something that the data will identify underutilized zones that we can help push people towards. And then also part of this process as we evaluate the data is really, again, looking at those disabled access parking spaces and making sure that we have enough of them distributed throughout the downtown, and then also identifying the potential of additional parking supply. What you see there on the right side is actually an example of the city of Seattle today does an annual parking study where they go out and look at the data basically once per year, and that evaluates and determines their policy decisions for the future. In your particular case, the plan is to provide ongoing evaluations so that, like the city of Paso Robles, which you see there in the upper right-hand corner, you'll actually be able to manage the data on a more frequent basis because you'll actually have the tools able to allow you to provide that evaluation. But ultimately there on the middle of the screen there where you see the mobile device with the mapping tool, the hope and the intent is as we talk about leveraging mapping applications and tools that we all use to drive today, we'll be able to help push people to where parking available resources are available. And just this last slide here is some of the additional strategies. I want to share with you that even just the meetings that we did in March, we got some really great feedback and some prioritization for some concerns from the different community members. that we've already basically started to respond to. I know that Molly and Chase have already taken that information forward, and in some cases to traffic engineering or to public works. So that one of the things that I know we're working on right now is a review of the on-street parking layouts. We've heard the concerns about the space sizes being inconsistent throughout the downtown. And so this is an effort that we're already working on as we speak. We're also looking at, with any new development, encouraging car sharing opportunities to help offset the need for vehicle ownership. One of the gems that we have right there in the downtown is the fact that we have light rail running right through the middle of downtown, and that's a definite pro that a lot of cities don't have the advantage of. So we want to be able to take advantage of that, and car sharing is one of those incentives that can help with that. We also know that looking at the electric vehicle charging options is something that we want to expand that footprint in the downtown. I want to highlight that this is something that came up during last month's meeting as well. Beaverton is not alone in this. This is a big part of the federal infrastructure push when we talk about transportation opportunities. And the fact is, we do recognize that not everyone will have an electric vehicle, but it is something that cities are updating their infrastructure in order to ready ourselves and prepare ourselves for the future. So that's something that is definitely a part of the plan. We're also considering a shuttle program. What you see there on the right side is an example of what we call a micro shuttle, but something that can really help support the Park Once methodology and also potentially help with crossing that major arterial as well. And this is something that, as we talk about a sustainable solution and looking at transportation alternatives, we think can really feed into that bigger model. And one of the other factors that we also got a lot of feedback on was the biking community, was making sure that we have convenient bike storage locations that are also secure, located throughout the downtown, and also the interest in shared mobility devices like scooters and bikes, and making sure that those locations that they're stored don't create congestion throughout our downtown that basically prevents pedestrian access or disabled access as well. So some of the next steps here we outlined on here. We've got some presentations coming up this week, and we're looking to finalize the feedback on the action plan. And then we also have a municipal code review along with some financial projections based on what city decisions are made. The municipal code review is something that's important when we talk about future-proofing the city so that the program is readied for whichever decisions are made in terms of that roadmap and that action plan. And so once the action plan is adopted, then what you'll see is city staff will bring forward what we call implementation packages, or what I'll call actionable items, and take those forward for approval, including those municipal code updates, and also some of the initial strategies, and also coordinating with improved routes to parking. So when we talk about this, this is without a doubt a citywide, basically collaboration. Not just one department on the city side basically touches this. Honestly, almost every department at the city basically touches this because so many factors are involved. And when we talk about those incremental adjustments, everything doesn't happen in the day. And honestly, everything that's in the action plan won't necessarily happen, because what's important in each community is by taking incremental changes, you move through the plan as needed. And you may not get past step 3, for example, because step 3 may be what's needed for Beaverton today. And then ultimately being able to move on to step 4 might not happen for several years in some cases. But I think that that's the important part of a program like this, is that it's definitely designed to be adaptive for a community like yours and to evolve as necessary. And with that, I'll close with the importance of community feedback ongoing and providing regular council updates. I think the part that I'm most excited for you all is the fact that you will have the data to also support the requests and the inquiries, so that when people want to know, well, why is this happening? Or why should we do this? Or when should we do this? The data is really what's going to help dictate that, along with the feedback from community members like yourselves. And with that, the Parking at Beaverton email address is a really great way to provide correspondence and feedback on the program. It's a really great centralized resource. And I will take the slideshow off and see if anybody has any questions. If not, I'm grateful. If that was a great presentation. Tyler, anything that else we should toss out there?
My mind is blown. Julie, Emily, it's great to see both of you. I haven't seen you actually live for a while.
That's been a while.
It has been. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have the two of you with Molly and Chase bring forward kind of these updates, because it has been interesting. We've had Dixon Resources with us for 2 to 3 years now. I guess 2.5 years probably, right? And the first time that we created you is just before COVID, and things have had to kind of move around at a little bit slower pace than we had really hoped for. But we got the garage open, and you were helpful on all that process as well. And so thank you for that. The one question that I have is action plan. And when do we expect to have that actually to a point where it's a draft version that staff can start toying around with it and taking a look, and then ultimately to a final plan?
Great. I'm going to look to Molly, because I think that that'll be a really great question for Molly to answer.
Thanks. And Chase is actually the one keeping my calendar straight on all of these meetings and everything. So he may have to correct me, actually. But the end goal here is that we are hoping to have the draft plan in the next couple of weeks. Emily's nodding, so that's reassuring. The draft plan in the next couple of weeks, presenting to Council and Bureau in the late April, sometimes in May. We're working around budget, fun stuff like that, to get this into the meetings for them to review all of the documentation. And then the hope is that it will be adopted as a plan in probably early June, or at the June Bureau meeting, and right around Council Bureau, maybe the same night, depending on how we can work it into all of the future agendas and all of that stuff. So Emily, did I get that right? Because I know that you and Chase have a way more detailed list of approaches.
That's correct. Yeah, we're almost done drafting the report, so that'll be done in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Thank you. That was really where my mind was. Erik?
Yeah, well, if there aren't any more questions, I want to say thank you to Molly and Julie and Emily for a very, very thorough and informative presentation. I think you didn't have any questions because you preemptively answered them all.
Luckily, we've had some really active conversations with your fellow community members, so I tried to be sure to incorporate some of that, because we've heard some pretty consistent themes. And I know the parking space size is a real concern for a lot of folks, so I thought I'd just throw that in there as well. So now we really do appreciate your all's time. And again, we'll definitely look forward to keeping you all abreast and aware. And I just saw the comments. I don't have flying cars yet. That's the one thing I probably haven't heard yet from most community members, although Molly's raising her hand on that one. So
Josh threw that in there for me. Because it's a running joke that we have had for 5 years now. When Josh was part of the development division, he liked to throw in comments about flying cars. So
yeah, I don't think it's too. It's not too far fetched. I got to be honest with you. I bet we're probably going to be talking about that in the near future. But in the meantime, though, we really do appreciate your all's time. I know you've probably got a full agenda, so. With that, unless there's anything else, we'll look forward to seeing you all again real soon.
Great.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we're going to go to Chase for some area project updates.
See if I can get unmuted here. Here we go. Yeah, just a few this week. We really got a couple of the big hitters to come here and present for you. So that's always nice when that works out. The one I'll start out with a little bit is the downtown equity strategy. So like we talked about previously, big round of engagement recently on that. Now came the compiling of what was gathered during that, and they did a fantastic job, in my opinion, of taking the qualitative data from that and really coding it and creating an interesting report of what we've heard from the community, including those focus groups which were mentioned, the culturally specific focus groups and language-specific focus groups that happened throughout Beaverton. So we'll have more information very soon to you all about that as it sort of moves from the reporting phase to the validation phase, the phase where we say, this is what we thought we heard. Did we hear correctly? So more to come on the downtown equity strategy. Looking at my list here, just a small update from our folks in planning. If you've seen over where the Breakside brewery is going in, there's going to be a food cart site and a container bar over, I believe, was that Washington Street, Tyler? Just west of Hall.
Yeah, it's actually Angel. Yeah, that one's Angel.
Angel, thank you.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hall or Watson? Sorry, Chase.
Watson.
Yeah, that's Angel.
Just west of Watson on Angel Street in Farmington. The Breakside Food Cart Pod just received land use approval and will be going to Planning Commission this month. So I think some of you all on this meeting should be seeing it there. That's an interesting project to watch as we look at the development of the downtown and the Old Town area. Yes, Mr. Winter.
Been through Planning Commission.
What's that?
It's been through Planning Commission.
Oh, already. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, next up here, the Milliken Way Extension. I don't know how much we have talked about this project. We've kind of mentioned some things happening on Milliken, but if you'll permit me, I'll open up a map here and share my screen. I know Erik probably has his up already. The Milliken Way Extension is a project that is going on, which will see here, which will extend Milliken like it says it's going to do. It is currently in the early design phase of it, but let's see here. Well, a lot going on over here. Okay, can you all see my map there?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so this is on the wrong side. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So here we have the round Milliken Way coming through here in the south, and I'm going to zoom over. A very interesting part of Milliken is that it is this nice kind of thoroughfare here, comes across Hall and Watson, and as many as you know, it stops right here before connecting with Lombard. So we're going to be looking at that. What does that look like to potentially connect it? What are the goals and the opportunities there for development of the street? There's already some approved funding that is available for that. But I want you all to be aware of that early on, especially as it will be affecting a very key part of transportation and connection in this Beaverton Central District. So if I can unshare this.
Chase, does the city own all the relevant land to make that connection?
I'll say a little bit on that, and then I'm sure Tyler has more to say. Essentially, to make the connection, we're not, I think, entirely sure from the plans development yet what we even mean by that. At this point, we're still looking at the options. And so as far as the relevant land goes, Tyler, tee up there.
Yeah, no, that's good, Chase. Yeah, Erik, no, the city doesn't own everything that could potentially be the alignment. I think that's one of the major conversations that will have to happen during these as we start meeting with various advisory groups and doing the community engagement process. Is where does it align? And the obvious choice is just continue on and head right into Lombard. And that may or may not be the best solution. The other solution might be a different alignment that goes into a intersection that is already existing. So whatever happens, there will be financial implications one way or the other that obviously will have to be a part of the conversation. So great question, Erik.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. We'll definitely have more as it comes along too. Couple other projects, Western Avenue. I think a few of you have asked about Western Ave and how that's proceeding on in the past. that's over there on the east side of the Bureau District. And currently it's still under construction. Right now, it seems like they're working on the part dealing with the water line that needs to go through there. So there is a other part to that, not just street improvements, but there's also a water line improvement going in through that space. And so that seems to be the main focus right now up and through the summer. They'll have more updates, and keep an eye on the Bureau area updates for that too. The library fountain is done, and there's going to be a big celebration coming up. So if you all like going down to the library, the park down there, want to check out the new fountain, you can look at the new fountain, but there's going to be a big one turning it on, and I think doing some stuff with it coming up in May. If you go look library fountain on the Beaverton City website, I think you'll find that exact date on there, and everybody is welcome to come join that. It's going to be a fun public event to have and join. And last but not least for me, I'd like to just update about a big project that's not a city project, but something that I'm sure that's probably affected all of you all, or you've at least seen it going on, is the Oregon 217 Auxiliary Lanes project. So that's the auxiliary lane that's coming onto the sides of 217. And if you want to check out more about that, you can do www.highway or HWI217.org, and you can get updates and see more about the engagement that's going on with that. I get these handy updates on my phone that happen when they say they're going to be shutting down one of the exits, or they're doing construction on that, which is really nice if I'm commuting in or heading into Portland to know, hey, maybe I should go another route. So check out that website if you're looking for that. Before I hand it back, I just want to see if Tyler has anything he wants to mention about the garage or the Center for the Arts, the RESER.
Not so much on those. They're open. Enjoy. Please get out there. Take a look at the research.org for events that are coming. And if you do have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Things just feel so much different out there, and it's amazing. There is one thing that I did want to mention though, Chase, and that is, so our division manager, Kate Petros, will be leaving the city. Her last day is on Friday. Many of you have met Cadence over the years, and she's going to be going to Echo Northwest, which is a private firm in downtown Portland, and they have their outreach to the entire West Coast. And she's going to be working in the world of equity and diversity, bringing her passion to other communities. That she's been able to open that up here in Beaverton. So very, very excited for her to be able to get into an area that she is so passionate about. We're going to miss her dearly. And if you do know Cadence and you want to shoot her off a quick hello before she leaves on Friday, yeah, please do so. She would appreciate it. I see, Devon, you have your hand up. I'll just go ahead and ask you. You have something.
Yeah, just a question here. I might be the only one that is unaware. What is the 217 lanes project? Is that on, where is that exactly?
Yeah, they are doing some improvements to the section of 217, Highway 217, and they're going to be doing it between, I think, about Walker Road, or it starts just after Walker, and then heads down a few exits. I don't remember exactly which one all the way down, but through and outside of the urban renewal area. And then what they're doing is, if you can think of on the east side of 217 and the west side, we have those ways that you can go through Canyon and Farmington, where you're kind of following along the highway.
Yeah,
they're going to be extending those auxiliary lanes, so that people can continue carrying on, I believe, on the west side, and they have better maps there on their website that I shared in the chat, but on the west side down to, I'm blanking on it, down to Allen, and then on the east side down an additional way as well, to help with the additional traffic and for people to be moving through the more urban area of Beaverton.
Okay, yeah, because I thought maybe that was at Allen and 217, that's part of it there.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if that was going to just be so that people could exit more easily there without really stopping necessarily, which might be an advantage for traffic both ways, actually. Okay, thank you.
It's a good question, Devin. It's kind of complicated. There's a lot of different pieces and obviously impacts that are happening as we speak if we're trying to drive up and down. But there are also pedestrian improvements that are happening. And so I don't want to miss that opportunity to note that. If you go to the website, it is kind of daunting because there is so much, but there is a nice map that might help of understanding what this auxiliary lane actually means. And that's the one that I've been using is the map that they have on the website.
Okay, thank you. I did have one other question. I'm sorry, I'm kind of dominating here. The Milliken, what was the sort of purpose of connecting Milliken, say, with Lombard? Is it supposed to, I mean, is it sort of making traffic go better through there? Or I think, Tyler, you maybe mentioned maybe it doesn't extend.
Yeah. Not until recently where there was a pedestrian connection made at the actual east end of Milliken to Lombard. And it's probably about 30 yards of additional 100 feet of pedestrian connection. And so connectivity linking the Beaverton Transit Center back to the west is very poor. We have one creek, a path that was recently built called the Crescent Connection on the north side of the creek between the two stations. And this is something that has been on Washington County's plan for many years. Over the time, Milliken has incrementally been improved. And some of us old timers kind of remember back in the day when there was much of a Milliken. And so slowly Washington County has been putting these different phases together in order to have another parallel route to Beaverton Hills, or excuse me, Canyon and TV Highway as they make their way out to the west.
Okay, I do like to get out and about and look at these things as when we talk about them and try to put it together in my mind a little bit, because we got a lot of stuff going on. It's pretty cool actually as a newcomer to see this. So I just kind of
no, great questions. And what you'll notice is there's missing sidewalks and missing bike lanes as well. So.
All right, any other questions for Tyler and Chase? Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda. And if I'm mathing right, I think we've got a quorum of people who were here at the last meeting. So are there any changes or corrections to last month's minutes? No? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve last month's minutes? All right, looks like a motion from Oswaldo. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, second from Jennifer. And I guess we'll take a straw poll here. If you are in favor of approving the minutes as written, raise your hand. All right, looks like it passes. Okay, well, I have one announcement to make before we sign off that's tangentially related to what we're doing here. The city and the BCCI are putting on the Spring Voters Forum on April 28th. It's at the Research Center. If you search for Voters Forum on the Research Center or on the city website, you can get a link to where you can get free tickets to the event. And I would encourage anybody who is interested to check that out, come attend the event. We're going to have people from 3 of the 4 council races speaking. 2 of them are uncontested. One of the uncontested races are currently Councillor Hartmeyer Prigg is not able to make it, but both of the contested races will be there. We'll also have somebody from the Beaverton School District to talk about the bond measure. So a lot of great information. So if you're able to make it, I encourage you all to come. And Chase just put the link in the chat, so check it out. Probably the very best part is going to be the first minute because I'm introducing Mayor Beatty. So if for nothing else, you want to check that part out. All right, and on that note, I think we can go ahead and adjourn the April meeting. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks all. Take care.